I guess we can't really start this without telling a quick story here. So, when we started, or when we had the idea of building the Dadu, here at our Cushman house, I remember there was a time where we went on site. Jesse and I were there. Jesse looked the property kind of like up and down, and he goes, building an ADU is like a glorified shed. There is no reason why this thing should cost 40 grand, 60 grand max. And then fast forward a couple months, we spent 40 grand just pushing some dirt around.
Yeah.
That was, obviously there's some stuff there out of context, but that was kind of the short story. So we're going to get into the meat and potatoes of this. And, we'll go ahead and first off, start with the financing here.
Yeah, so real quick to answer this question, DADU stands for Detached Additional Dwelling Unit. And here where we're at, Seattle area, there's a big push to create affordable housing, and one of the ways they're going about doing that is changing density and zoning when allowing us to build backyard cottages and trying to streamline the process and make it faster and so forth. So that's what DADU stands for. You also have just a regular ADU, additional dwelling unit, which could be part of the existing house. But in this case we're talking about today, it's just a completely detached little house is what we're going to be looking at. So, but back to how we started this. So we looked at this property we owned. It was it still is a rental property we've got. And we look at that and we decided we want to build this thing in the backyard. We have alley access. The power line ran in the alley, so that seemed like it was going to be easy enough to get power to. The house was on sewer. The backyard, the alley was a higher elevation than the main house, so it seemed like it shouldn't be difficult to get all the utilities hooked up, and that's how we started with this. At the time, it was just a big blackberry field basically, and we had a lot of room there. So there was some discussion about doing this, and we decided to do it. We went to Beth at Flynn Family Funding to discuss ways we could borrow money to do this, and we came up with doing a cross-collateralization on another property we already owned that had equity and the existing property that had equity, and they gave us pretty much all the funds we needed to do it. Yeah, so we started with our permitting and our plans. And in Tacoma, the process was pretty straightforward, actually. We had a very basic plan. This is the actual floor plan and layout of this ADU here on the screen. It's a 1-bedroom, 1-bath, 625 square foot building, 25 feet by 25 feet. So it's nice, small, and it fits right back in there. And it's just roomy enough inside to be comfortable for a single person or maybe a couple to live in. Our total permit costs were around $3,700. We rounded up a few dollars. The architect's drawing and the drafting was very inexpensive just because it was such a basic, simple plan. And he charged us $1,500 for that. And then the city allowed us to do a separate water meter here as well. And that was the biggest expense out of it, was $4,300. And building the building itself, we're in right around $160,000 right now. So this entire project ended up costing about $170,000. So it's a lot more than the $40,000 glorified shed that I was anticipating. But at the same time, the main reason I really wanted to go into this is I've been hearing from a lot of people just in the last couple months that they're getting quoted anywhere from $300,000 to $400,000 to build one of these. And even people who are experienced and have done a lot of projects have came and asked me, oh, what did it cost a lawyer to do this and that for the Seattle Dadu? And this guy's quoted me 30 grand to do this and 100 to do that. And I've heard it from so many people at this point that I wanted to share what we've been experiencing. Now, we haven't done a lot of these. I don't want to sit here and act like I'm some expert at this, but we've done this one, we're doing another one in Seattle, and then separately, I'm doing another one with another partner in Seattle where the costs are just not what people are thinking they are. And I kind of compare this to like the gold rush, where the people who made the money in the gold rush were selling the tools to the miners, right? And the miners ended up making nothing. So it kind of feels like that, where the people who are providing these services of doing the plans and getting your permits and doing your condo lots, those people are charging so much money that they're just taking advantage of something that people are getting excited about, and a lot of people are just paying it, and I just don't see how they're going to make anything on these ADUs. But
Oh yeah, it's really crazy, especially I think with what people have been quoted for the soft costs, right?
yeah,
And I think that was like the biggest focus of curiosity for this Zoom was really figuring out and going into some of those soft costs, and
yeah.
we can certainly talk a little bit more about that as well. But yeah, we spent $160,000 on the building here, and we didn't cheap out on this place.
No, I did the same thing building this as I do in any other flips. The same appliances, the same countertops, the same flooring, everything. So it's not like I went in there and tried to just build a crap shat piece of garbage. I wanted just a decent little spot for somebody to live in. I mean, we did mini splits and ductless heat pumps. I didn't even just do the bare minimum, which is just leaving it in one room of the house or the main area. We put a separate unit in the bedroom just to have even heating and cooling in the whole house. So
Yeah.
there was extra cost there. We did that slide-in range you see in the kitchen, which costs more than just a regular one. Like if I wanted to cheap this out, we could have probably spent a lot less and ended up with a piece of garbage house and rented it to the lowest rent possible. But we wanted something nice, and we wanted something where people were going to be happy living in it, because this building for us is a long-term hold for us, most likely, and they're not doing the condo lots in Tacoma for these yet. So we went into this knowing that we're going to be keeping this for a while.
Yeah, we're not going to be able to get our money back at least anytime soon.
No.
But we'll talk about some things that Tacoma, at least what we've heard from the permitting department, and what could be coming down the line here. But we've got a couple questions here that we could probably pause for.
Yeah.
So Randy just asked for cross collateralization. How far is Flynn willing to go on LTV on the other leveraged property in second position?
To tell you the truth, I don't remember what LTV we looked at. I know we had around 200,000 or so in equity in the other property, and we had probably about the same in this property. Probably about the same or close to it. So it's a good equity position when you combine both properties. It's probably a case by case basis working with them, which is why we like working with them. We paid a slightly higher rate than we would have going to some hard money lender, but it was just such an easy process where I showed them the plan we're going to do, and they just gave me a check basically. And there wasn't a lot of stupid bullshit in the way of that. We got the money, we started building, and that was it.
Zach Taylor just asked, what department at the city do you go for the permits? Did you pull permits as the homeowner or as the company building it?
No, I'm a licensed GC because I have to be for house flipping, and even though I haven't sold as many of them, I've been keeping them, but it's still something that I maintain the license and the insurance. But we went to the building department, we went to the planning department. Our architect facilitated a lot of that for us, and it was the same as getting a building permit for doing a remodel. Really, we didn't do it as homeowner permits. We did it as a contractor pulled the permit.
Sorry, I just realized that we had a slight issue with the audio, so I don't know if it's changed or if it's better now, but I just had to make a quick change there. Jacob just asked, for building costs, does that include in-house labor or true GC costs?
Going back up to that screen. It's a mix of both. The roughly 160,000, it's within a few $1,000s of the actual cost. We just rounded it up, but I do have some in-house labor on this, but at the same time, I subbed out a lot of stuff on this. We subbed out framing, we subbed out the foundation, the dirt work, the utilities, and we subbed out the mini splits. We subbed out. I mean, pretty much the only thing I did in house was installing cabinets, installing flooring, installing trim, and painting, and or installing the drywall. And outside of that, everything else was subbed out to somebody else.
Please share the contact for your architect.
We can do that at the end.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you can also reach out to us privately. I mean, we're not keeping anything a secret here, so just let us know. Once you condo the plat, how does it affect the property value, and how do you comp that out? Is it priced compared as a condo? Priced and comped as a condo?
So when you look at determining value on a property, I feel like it's an art more than a science, right? There's not a lot of DADU comparables yet, just because there hadn't been that many built really yet, at least down in the south end. We cannot condo this quite yet, but the way I'm looking at it, it's the same way I'm determining rent really. I go and I find the cheapest thing that's similar in size and that's relatively new, whether it's a condo or not, and then I determine what I'm building has to be at least worth this much. So, and in all likelihood, whatever I put together here is worth more than an attached condo or even a townhome. So, detached building is always a little bit more expensive than a condo conversion apartment or a townhome. So, with that in mind, I already know that this 1 bedroom, 1 bath house is easily worth $350 or $400 if it were on its own, and the house that is existing is probably worth right around the same, probably a little more actually because it's bigger, but it's old. So
Yeah.
no, we look at it that way. I just like to look at worst case scenario. If I look at a condo and it's this size and it's new and it's attached, then I know it's worth more than that, and that's all I need to know to want to go build it. Mainly for us, we already realized that building this is going to bring in roughly $2,000 a month of rent is what we were expecting, based on apartment builds in downtown Tacoma, or newer apartments. So, they do have amenities, but it's still an apartment.
And location-wise, I mean, it's great. We're pretty close to the hospital there. And
Two hospitals.
Two hospitals. Yeah, actually, yeah, two hospitals.
Right. Our main plan doing this was going to be furnished nurse rental, but it just sounds like too much work. I just want to rent it to somebody and be done with it. So we knock off 10% off that $2,000, and we already have people lined up to rent it at $1,800.
Yeah. So I think we could probably move on to the next slide here. So building a DADU in Seattle, and we can talk about some of the differences with the soft costs for building one in Seattle, as well as some of the other differences as well.
Yep. The main difference so far for us building in Tacoma versus Seattle has been the time. The time we even started to even conceive of building this building in Tacoma to the time we had the building permit in our hands was about 3 months. So the architect was able to bang out that plan. We were able to submit for permits. We were able to process, pay for the permit, and we were ready to go 3 months later.
You know what? Actually, I just thought of something. We literally finished the Tacoma DADU in the same time that it took to get the permit approval in Seattle.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We went to Seattle. We bought a pre-approved plan, and the time it took for our permit to be approved, from the time we submitted, this isn't even the amount of time leading up to submitting the permit. We were done building this one already, almost. So it took about a little over a year to get our permits in hand with the Seattle DADU, and that's even with the pre-approved plan. Now I realize there's people who have got these things approved and done in a matter of months, and I don't know how they did it, but
They just hate you.
Yeah, they just hate me. But I used the pre-approved plan. We worked with the architect who did the pre-approved plan, and for some reason, it just took us longer on both the Seattle DADU sites we're working on. Now, one of them does have a critical area. It's a stupid critical area, but it is a critical area nonetheless. So I can chalk that delay up to having the critical area on the lot. But the second one that you and I are working on, there is no critical area. There's an alley access. There's a right-of-way on the side. It's like the perfect little corner lot to build this. Even though it's a small lot. We slammed this thing in there, but it just took a long time. Now, as far as the price, it's very similar to the Tacoma one, where the permitting was just under $4,000. Our pre-approved plan with the architect were right around $3,000. But what we did in Seattle that we did not do in Tacoma was the condo lots, which came with condo declarations and bylaws and things that the attorney had to do for us. The attorney's portion, we spent about $2,000 on it. The condo lot and the surveys themselves, we had to do two surveys. We had to do the main survey to orient everything and the site plans and determine where property lines were. And we had to do then a condo survey. So between those two, we're just under $9,000 on surveys. So, I mean, even with all this stuff here, what does that add up to? We're still under 20,000, aren't we? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, we're $17,000, $18,000 in soft costs to have our permits and to have two separated condo lots. And this is another one where I've been told by 2 or 3 people it's going to be 100,000 plus to do this, and
Yeah.
I don't see it. Like I don't feel like I'm smarter than anybody else. And in fact, I'm fairly average intelligence. I'm not very educated, and somehow I end up doing $20,000 for these costs where someone is going to sit there and tell everybody it's going to be 6-figure amount. So that's just crazy.
Actually, so you told me a funny story about a partner that you work with who went to an attorney that he's used several times, and for the condo declaration and the bylaws and all that stuff, he was getting quoted what, like 20 grand or something like that?
I think 15 or 20,000 minimum for the attorney to do this condo declaration. That's not surveys, that's not permit, that's just bylaws, declaration, and the condo association, all that boilerplate template stuff they already have done.
Right.
Just to make small adjustments for our property. So it's crazy. Again, it's selling the tools to the gold miners, right? And those are the people who are getting rich off of this.
And how are they trying to justify that price again?
He had mentioned, we had brought up the fact that this other attorney already did it for us for $3,000 or $2,000. And like, we file your first tax return for you. And I'm like, filing a tax return is worth $15,000, right? It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, that's kind of silly.
Yeah.
So we've got a question from Chan. Does your architect also handle permits and surveys, or do you do it yourself?
The architect handled the permit management. The surveys, we hired a surveyor separately to do that. But they were in contact with each other too.
Yeah. So I don't know how much we've stressed it, or maybe even at all, but there are some things coming down the line with Tacoma, right? So we had a conversation with the permitting department. What did they tell us?
When we had started on this, I had talked to the planning department about doing the condo lot for this DADU. They had mentioned they're not quite set up for it yet, but they are planning on pushing that, and I should expect to see some movement on that at the end of this year. So there is going to be a point in time, likely, where we can condo this DADU and have it a separate building at that point, or separate parcel.
Yeah. And at that point, too, when we do have a separate parcel, when we are able to condo this in Tacoma as well, we should be able to do a cash out refinance and get all of our money back too, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to have to figure out another way to do that anyway, because we have short-term financing, but at the same time, yes, we are going to be able to have either a free and clear parcel at that point, and we refi the existing house, or we refi the house and pull out cash out of the DADU to get some money back either way. So one thing that was nice about these DADUs in Tacoma is right away we had a separate address as opposed to a A and B situation, where I know a lot of them in Seattle, they're A, B, C units. They also let us do a separate water meter, and that's helpful for a couple reasons. For us as landlords, I don't want to pay the water bill. I want the tenants to pay it.
Yeah.
And they can have water in their own name at this point. We're still tied to it because we're the owners, but they're able to pay that on their own and have their own account. Whereas in Seattle, now I did see someone building these DADUs tell me they were allowed to do a water meter. But I've heard from a lot of people, and I even when I called the Seattle utility, that we can't do another water meter. So I don't know if it's different now or if it's just one of those things where you just keep calling and hanging up until you hear what you want. So that could be the case.
Sounds like they've got different rules for us.
Yeah, it's like everybody else. But no, the separate water meter was nice. It was $4,000 expense, but it's cheaper really, not even in the long run, than trying to do the sub-meter stuff in Seattle, which gets pretty expensive and pricey.
Yeah.
But the way Tacoma has set it up with its own address, with its own water meter, it's completely independent at this point, where even if we have to condo and give them an association, there's not going to be a whole lot of, they're not going to end up fighting over utilities at some point or fighting over maintenance of anything. It's very clear and cut and dry which property is which property.
So Chan has another question here. What are the holding costs for the property, paying loan interest, tax, insurance, while waiting for permit and building the DADU?
It's a good question. On this one that we built, we have a mortgage on the property that's covered by the tenant living in the existing house. So we're fortunate that we already had this tenant and this house established before we even started doing the DADU build. That tenant paid rent. We cash flow a few $100 a month, I think, on that one.
Yeah.
And they've been really accommodating on the construction behind their house for a year. So we can't really ask for a better tenant in that regard. But we did borrow money to build this thing, and we're paying like 11% interest, I think, on $200,000, which, we're close to $2,000 a month. But at the end of the day, it's a small price to pay to get this done.
Yeah. Well, great. I think that's actually the end of our presentation here. So we're happy to open it up for more questions. So please keep them coming. So Sue asked, what were some of the deciding factor to build as opposed to bringing a pre-built manufactured home?
There was a couple things, actually. I actually thought about that. They've got these prefab tiny homes too, and tiny home RVs and all kinds of manufactured options. But at the end of the day, we know that at some point there's a very good chance, and it's pretty likely, we're going to be able to separate this parcel into two. And a stick-built home, whether it's fair or not, will get more value than any kind of manufactured option.
Yeah.
And that's why we wanted to do it. The main reason. Second reason is we have complete control over how the building sits on the property and where we put it and how we orient the floor plan. And that was the other option, or the other determining factor. And then last, these tiny homes and these prefab options, while they originally started to be affordable options, have ended up just being so expensive. Yeah. Even a tiny home would cost,
actually the same as what we built our building for.
We've seen tiny homes start at $80,000 and go up to as high as $200,000 or $300,000. And granted, those are really nice, but it's still it's a tiny home, and it just didn't really. If we're going to spend even $100,000 on a tiny home or $150,000 on a stick-built home, I'd rather have the stick-built home and pay a little more, and I have something that at some point is going to be worth $300,000 or $400,000 once we can do the condo lot
and get permanent financing, right?
And that was the other thing. We are going to be able to have permanent financing on
this. Can go conventional financing. Someday.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then as far as the ones in Seattle, we can pretty much do that right away the second we're done building it. We're actually working on the foundation right now as we do this. So.
Zach Taylor, what is stopping you from separating the properties? Is it the city survey team won't allow that? Is there a timeline that you're looking at? So, condoing stuff is not a new concept, and you've always been able to condo things, but the way we want to condo this DADU and the way we want it set up, they're not streamlining that process in Tacoma yet, and they are planning on doing it, like we said, probably the end of the year is when they told us we can expect to see some clarity on that. But
if we had the right zoning, if this was zoned for some kind of duplex or something, we've already been talking to them about it. We could have done it in that case, but this is a standard single family home in a regular neighborhood, and they're not going to let us separate it yet.
Yeah, great question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's pretty much it. We can stay on for a couple more minutes if there's more questions. I don't know if there's anything that you wanted to add.
No, I think that's pretty much covers it. Again, the main reason I wanted to do this is because I just keep hearing soft costs are 100,000 plus, and it's not the case. Like, we looked at our numbers yesterday just to make this presentation. I mean, the one on the screen right now, this is Seattle. We're under $20,000 for our soft costs, and that's going to give us our two condo lots.
Yeah.
And back to Tacoma, we're under $10,000
Yeah,
for all of our soft costs.
9,500.
Yeah, and that's including the second water meter, which is almost $5,000 alone.
Yeah. Now, when we are ready to condo this, and if we're able to do this in the future, I mean, we're still probably looking at right around here, right?
Yeah. The attorney charges about, I think, $250 an hour, and they estimate anywhere from 10 to 15 hours to do this. So, it's a lot better than $20 or $30 or $50,000 on that part.
Yeah. Well, really great. We had about 30 people show up or so we hope this was worth it for you guys. We're still happy to stay on as long as there's any more questions. You can also unmute your mics if you want and just ask a question if it's a little bit more complicated. But yeah, hopefully this was helpful.
Yep. Look like we're...
Are these your two only data that you have reviewed?
I haven't done a lot. We haven't done too many, but we're working on 2 others in Seattle and working on this one here in Tacoma. Right.
If you do it again, is there anything that you would do differently?
I think what I'll do differently is, so I've already started the building permit process and all of that with the ones in Seattle, where now that I have a better understanding on how the DADU lots and the condo lots work, we would push to get those done faster. Because at the end of the day, they don't really take very long to do that portion of it. What did take a while was we used more than one surveyor, and there was some not conflict, but miscommunication between both sometimes, and there were just too many fingers in the pie, I guess, what you could say, where a lot of things got lost, in between talking from one person to another. So what I do differently in the future on those ones is use the same surveyor for everything, be really clear about what I am expected to pay for these surveys, and get them done as soon as possible rather than just kind of letting it fall on the wayside while I wait for building permits.
Another question came up. What if you don't have much equity in your property? How would you fund it? I mean, it's an interesting question.
Yeah, no, it's there's, at the end of the day, you need money to do this, whether you pull out of some kind of equity or you have the money already.
And when we initially started, I mean, we put our own money into it too.
Yeah, we had the money to do this when we started. It made it easier that we can go pull the money from somewhere else.
Yeah.
So that is...
Actually, you're right. At the beginning, we weren't really even thinking about cross-collateralization. We actually brought in our own money to start this, thinking that someday that this was going to pay off, and then Flynn came kind of to the rescue.
The someday came a little bit faster than we anticipated. We were just going to build it slowly over time, and I'm glad we didn't do that. But no, at the end of the day, yes, you'd either get the equity from somewhere, or if we had to, we would have brought another partner in and maybe give them an ownership stake, or pay them some kind of lump sum interest at the end. One way or another, we would have tried to be as creative as we can to raise that money.
Great question. Teddy Lim, thank you for stopping by. Have you tried refinancing on a DSCR loan? Wondering if it's financeable that way. Probably someday.
I'm sure it would be. We have great underlying financing existing on the current house that it's really hard to look at that and try to refinance it, because I think we're sub 3% on that. What are we, like 2.875?
Oh yeah, so like on the main house, Actually, on that house, we might be under 3.
Yeah, I think we're like
2.8 or something like that. Yeah.
30-year fixed. And now it's going to be painful to refi that because we're going to have to, because that encumbers the entire property. So when we do eventually have the DADU lots, if we want to do any kind of loan on that DADU, we're going to have to refi the under 3% loan. So,
Yeah.
I'm not as concerned about interest these days because I've realized that, your rent is paying the interest. Now, I get you have less cash flow, but at the end of the day, if you can have a loan on separate in 2 different buildings and have more money back, then that's worth it too.
Yeah. So from start to finish in Tacoma, how long did it take?
It took us about a year to build it. It took us about 3 months to get our permit. And the only reason it took a year to build it is because we kind of had periods of time where we're working on it, then I'm pulling them off and working on something else and just kind of running around in circles. So
Yeah.
it could have been done a lot faster. And it's just another reason how we were able, I guess, to keep costs low is some of our in-house stuff was probably cheaper than what
Yeah.
some other people would pay. But I still don't think there's any reason it would cost $300,000 to build this thing.
So someone asked, was it Cal that asked the question about what we would do differently? It sounded like Cal. I don't know.
I think it was Chan.
Chan, sorry. So I guess I'll ask you a question. So if there was an opportunity for us to pay a little bit more to just get it done faster, would you have done it? So this is a conversation that we have a lot, right?
Yeah, this is something, like you said, we talk about this often. And I guess at the end of the day, yes. If we could have been done in like 3 months or 4 months,
Mhm.
which it's probably completely possible if you got a full crew there working every day, this probably could have been done in about half the time. Now, would I pay double that? No. But would I pay an extra maybe 15 or 20% to do that? I think maybe I would. And in this case, only because the equity would probably be there and it would absorb that extra cost. Right?
Yeah.
Where we're hoping to at some point be able to get a loan on this DADU and get a loan on the house separately, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
why are you using cross collateral loan? Is there an option to finance the building new property without cross collateral? I think for this property, we just didn't have enough equity that we were able to pull, right?
yeah, we owe like $320 or $330 on the existing house.
Yeah.
It's probably worth about $500 or maybe $475 right now.
Yeah.
Which, what is it? It's not enough equity to you can't pull all of it out, right?
Yeah.
So there was other properties we had more equity in, but this was easy and this was quick. They gave us $200,000 all up front. We didn't have to take draws,
Yeah.
which is another nice thing about Flynn. But they just gave us the money. We had the equity there. It's long-term hold on both these properties with 30-year fixed financing. So it was an easy decision for us to make.
Yeah. What were your payments like on that, holding it for a year?
So we're about 11% on interest, I think, $200,000. So we're like $1,800 or so a month or something close to that, if I remember right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And really, the cash flow on the house, both houses we have rented, the cash flow on those doesn't cover all of it. It does cover a portion, but we are out of pocket a little bit each month on this financing. So it looks like we got
we had
that's
some-
pretty much all our questions.
We had some good questions in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know there's probably people in this group who've done some DADUs already, so I imagine their experience is probably similar to what we've got. But yeah, I guess if there's no other question, then we can call this a wrap. But I want to thank everybody for coming. And
Yeah.
We're still here and available. If you have questions later, just don't hesitate to reach out. And we're still building the ones in Seattle right now. So at some point, if you want to see one of them, then you can stop by the ones in Seattle one day too.
Yeah. Oh, someone thinks it's your birthday today. We actually had this conversation earlier.
So each of my Facebook's accounts has a different birthday, and I did that to throw off the algorithm so it would be less likely to block me. But yeah, my birthday was last month, but thank you.
Yeah, and like Jesse said, we're always happy to share information. We love exchanging ideas. We're always happy to open up our projects too and let you guys come take a look at what we're doing. So just please don't hesitate to reach out to one of us, ask the questions. We definitely want to keep this going and let us know how we can help. So yeah. All right.
Yep. Thanks,
Bye, guys.
We'll see you.
Yep.